One more minute here. It's loading. All right, looks like we are good.
Okay. I would like to call the order the Plan Commission meeting for June 2nd, 2020 at 6 p.m. Would everyone, well, stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America
and to the
and to the
republic
for which it stands,
one
nation,
under God,
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible, with liberty and
all.
justice for all.
Statement of public notice.
The amended agenda was posted and distributed to all news media requesting notification in accordance with the open meeting laws on Monday, June 1st.
Thank you. Approval of minutes. Approval of the minutes from the May 5th meeting.
Move to approve.
We do a roll call?
Oh, yeah, we didn't. You're right. I'm going to get these agendas right one of these days. Can we do a roll call vote or attendance roll call, please?
Commissioner Graff, Commissioner Oliver,
Here.
Alderman Kubaki,
Here.
Commissioner Jocks,
Here.
Commissioner Buckmaster,
Unmute yourself, Chris.
okay, Commissioner Bartlett,
Here. Okay.
Mayor Petfalski,
Present.
Planner Trzaskowski.
Here.
Okay.
All right, we have a quorum. Now moving on to approval of minutes. Approval of the minutes from the May 5th, 2020 meeting.
Move to approve.
Second.
All those in favor of the minutes or approving the minutes, say aye.
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 Opposed? Passes. Minutes are accepted. Consent business.
We have resolution PC 032-2020, approval of a 2-lot certified survey map for Eric Rustal on Ryan Drive. Resolution PC 033-2020, approval of the sale of fireworks for TNT Fireworks at Walmart on Moreland Road. Resolution PC 035-2020, approval of the sale of fireworks for Freedom Fireworks in the Pick and Save parking lot on Janesville Road. And resolution PC 038-2020, approval of a final plat for Muskego Lakes Estates along Ryan Drive.
Move to approve and gross.
Did I get a second? Any questions on anything in consent? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Moving on to new business for consideration. Resolution PC 034-2020. Approval of building site and operation amendment for Vintage Grounds located at South 74 West 16825 Janesville Road.
Move to approve.
All right.
Mark
Got those
Oliver,
two?
second.
All right.
Thank you. So this request is for a site amendment for Vintage Grounds. That's the coffee shop that's located in the strip mall near Pick and Save. Jimmy John's is in there and Domino's and such. The coffee shop previously had approvals to do some outside seating in front of their building, which was approved, I believe it was last year. What they found out during the pandemic period that they wanted to offer more outdoor seating for their patrons. So they will kind of did it as a little trial, but now are formally requesting approval, which we appreciate. Putting a few seats kind of in a grass area that would be immediately east of their building. They've worked with the landlord to make sure that the tables get moved whenever there's lawn cutting and stuff like that. So there's no problems with any kind of conflict there. And this is something they want to have as part of their kind of going forward approval seasonally through the spring, summer, fall season each year. The applicant was not able to be part of the meeting today. She was out of town, but it was confident we can kind of help convey what she's looking at here. Staff didn't see any issues with this. I think the biggest thing is working with the landlord, which she's been doing to make sure they don't have a problem when it comes to like lawn maintenance and stuff, but it looks good. And a nice little addition, especially to give residents another safer option if they so wish to take it.
I would say I highly agree with that.
As do I, but I had one concern as far as walking. That's all driveway, ingress egress for a lot of other businesses. There's no stop signs. There's no means to stop anybody. And there's no passageway or walkway markings on that asphalt. That may be a suggestion.
Any thoughts on that or any other comments?
So are they gonna have two tables across the drive?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so there will be a conflict with traffic.
Yeah. And there is on this site already, there is kind of a communal seating area that Jimmy John's kind of pushed for. It's not really utilized a lot. That's actually across the parking lot, but facing Janesville Road. I don't believe it's striped for a crosswalk in the parking lot, but that is something to consider.
It's probably no more of a risk than people walking to their cars that are parked over there, though.
Right.
Same path.
Right, that's what I was gonna
Well, all the
say.
park-
That
All the
picnic
parking is adjoining the property of the sidewalk right there. There is no, there isn't any parking on the east side of the building. That's where they'd be going, correct?
There are actually a few on the northeast corner of the property that do face Parkland there. They're just a little bit like would be, they're like kind of northwest. They're on the northeast corner of the site there.
Correct.
So there's parking here. If you can see that, Mark.
Sure can.
And then the 2 spots would be here, so.
Okay. It was just a safety concern, that's all.
Could we just recommend it, Adam? Maybe the landlord would be happy to do it.
Yeah. Do we want to make it a suggestion or a requirement? We might either way.
I would lean towards suggestion, but I'm not
Social
strong.
distancing is a suggestion also, so.
Right.
Yeah, I would,
I agree.
I would agree. A suggestion's fine.
Yep, agreed.
Okay. Should we still formally amend it? And then we can just word it as, yeah, it will be a suggestion that, a striping crosswalk be added.
Sure.
Sure,
So moved.
So who would move?
second,
All's in favor of the amendment, say aye.
aye.
Opposed? Any other discussion on the proposal as amended?
Move to approve,
No,
or
it's already,
what?
it's already on the table, so I was just making sure there
okay.
was no other. All right, hearing none, all those in favor of the amended resolution, say aye.
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 Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to Resolution PC 036-2020, approval of a building site and operation amendment for Jewel Homes LLC located at 173 South 7600 Westwood Drive.
Move to approve.
Second.
All right, give me 1 second here. I'm just moving John Jewell, the applicant, over from the attendee category. John, are you there?
I'm here. I'm not seeing a picture though. Can you hear me?
Looks like your camera is off. Let's see if I can help you with that. Definitely hear you.
There
you
it
go.
is.
There he
There we
is.
go.
John. So yeah, okay. I'll kind of go through this middle and then kind of have John fill in anywhere necessary. I'm going to just mute everyone here real quick. All right. So the request that you have in front of you today is for John Jewell and Jewell Homes, and they're seeking a building site and operation plan approval for a new building that they're going to use for storage and some shop space for their Jewell Homes business. This property is located kind of to the southwest behind the Drome Drugs strip mall. Yeah, this is a building that originally was a post office for the city of Muskego, and then most recently has been used as like a little shop for a plumber. Site's been for sale. John has an offer to purchase, I believe. And as part of that, he's looking at, like I said, having this be a space for some storage and business storage and personal storage. Storage would include items such as like I said, some personal items, but also more specifically, like if they have stuff left from job sites like siding or extra materials, it would not be like an active customers coming and going kind of site. There wouldn't be a showroom or something. It's really just a place to keep equipment, materials, tools, very passive type of use. The proposal really has two phases to it. Phase one would be, kind of fixing up the front half of the building, for lack of a better term, involving painting, some overhead doors, and kind of get the ball rolling. And then phase two would be an addition off the back of the site, or the back of the building. And as part of the addition, that would then include a gable roof. It would include siding. It would have similar color scheme to the main part of the building. It would also include some more overhead doors. And as part of that phase also, then John would kind of clean up the rest of the site. The site just needs a little TLC, as if you've seen it. He'll kind of clean up, any areas of the asphalt that are in rough shape. There's a lot of areas where the asphalt's not really defined. So it's really just that idea of tidying everything up there aesthetically. On this note of this item, we did receive a call and a subsequent email from Jerry Hulbert. Those of you may remember, Jerry used to be on the Plan Commission. Jerry lives immediately next door would be the south. Jerry doesn't have a problem with the use. The email, which I'm pulling up here real quick, that they sent to us, and I did forward to all you Plan Commission members, so hopefully you got it, but I'll kind of just go over it a little bit here. It talks about their location on the south. It talks about that they are pleased to see the upgrades and definitely think it will enhance the neighborhood. They had two concerns. One of them was in the south side of the existing building. Their concern was that there's going to be paint put over the existing block wall. It's like I think that's a CMU kind of block on that side of the wall, where the front and the north side kind of have a brick. This side was more the CMU block. John is proposing to paint that as part of the proposal. They were hoping, as part of the phase two, which would include siding on the addition, they wanted to ask if that siding be carried over onto the existing part of the southern side of that building, so that the whole south side will have one uniform look, and they believe that the siding will fit better into the residential neighborhood, which I don't disagree with that. Normally we promote masonry on commercial buildings, but the masonry that's there, CMU block isn't anything pretty. And especially if a neighbor's requesting it, and John can chime in if he's got any questions or concerns with that in a minute. But that was one of the requests of the neighbor to the south, as well as the second concern was landscaping. The owners of the south have over the years planted quite a few bigger arborvitae type shrubs and trees. There is kind of a gap in that. So their other question was to try to maybe have John propose some landscaping or screening or something along that side to kind of fill in that gap. In talking to this neighbor here, one of the options I mentioned on the landscaping, and John can chime in on this too, and I threw out there, these existing trees are right on their lot line, and John's lot, is obviously on his side of the lot line, meaning if John adds some trees there, it's going to kind of be this weird shift where you're going to have some trees forward, then you have some trees back, some trees forward again. I even threw out the idea, if John was willing or able to even maybe work with those owners, who I think they've talked already today, John, facilitate some landscaping on their property so they kind of keeps them in line with those trees. So that's something we can have as part of the discussion here. But so yeah, it was Jerry and Patricia Hulbert on Westwood that had those comments. And like I said, they talked to me, and I know they did reach out to John today, and I think they had a conversation with him that seemed to go very well from what they told me. Let me just go over my notes here. No signage is specifically proposed at this time. We have a few notes that if a dumpster or refuse enclosure is, if dumpsters or refuse containers are needed, they either have to be kept in the garage or have an enclosure built, which needs to be approved by the city. Any lighting would need further city review. One of the things that's come up on some other properties lately relates to curb and gutter. We're making some notes. However, the petitioner, we normally would want curb and gutter when sites are rehabbed, but it's usually only when they're doing like full site repaving and things like that. In this scenario, they're just really looking at doing, I believe it's repairing. And as such, we're saying if it's repairing, they don't have to do the curb or gutter. If they would end up doing like a full tear out construction, then we would look to have that added, was something that's suggested in the resolution. There aren't formal parking stalls identified because there aren't formal employees and stuff that'll be here. A lot of what will be here is coming to pick up something and going, and maybe if they have a job trailer inside or something, coming and pick it up and going. As far as the building goes, like I said, there's going to be, painting of the building, some upgrading of materials, just a lot of TLC, which this building really, really needs. And then the addition that's in the back is going to have, fiber cement siding, and, the roof line will have, like I said, gable roof with shingles. So, they kind of were designing it in that way to help it fit in with the residential neighborhood, even though the existing front half of the building has a flat roof. As far as the east side of the building goes, like I said, yeah, that's the one on the new building that would be all fiber cement. And yeah, I'm just going through my notes here. Yeah, that's pretty much it with the architectural design. The addition to the building that they're proposing as part of phase 2 would be about 2,700 square feet. The typical business hours when there would probably be people here would be 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. There'd be no unnecessary loud noises or loading, unloading traffic outside those hours. So it shouldn't cause any kind of conflict with the neighborhood, as this is kind of that transitional property. So staff was recommending approval. I just think the Plan Commission should probably talk about, and John can talk too, about the questions that came from the neighbors regarding that southern elevation and the landscaping. So let me unmute everyone here real quick. All right.
Vast improvement to what's there now. Vast improvement. How was your conversation with Jerry?
With Jerry and Patty was great. I originally had said just painting that black because of the masonry requirements, and quite honestly, I agree it would look better with the siding down and then like a brick belt line. It's a residential look. And I guess if the city's good with that, we would definitely be on board with that. I think it'd be a better transition too.
I mean,
As far as the landscaping, so your business that's transitioning to a residential area, usually we like to see some sort of landscaping, either a tree line, bushes, something.
Yeah, I mean, as far as the kind of privacy line between Hulbert's property and our property would be, they have a pretty nice row of, I believe they're arborvitaes. My opinion is whatever they would want within reason, and meaning if they want more arborvitaes, let's do that. If they say, they want plantings of some sort, I can't imagine that doing much privacy, but sounds like arborvitaes is what they'd be after, and that'd be perfectly fine. I
did let the Halbert family know that, yeah, typically if we are going to use it for screening purposes, the city's general suggestion is a 6-foot arborvitae. They seemed very accommodating to that. I think the question just might be, I guess it doesn't even matter. As part of the Plan Commission resolution, it doesn't have to state where. Maybe we can put in there that, additional screening will be provided to fill in any gaps in view. And then John and the Halberts can work together to determine where exactly they locate those, to a mutually agreeable.
Yeah, I would be comfortable adding that, and I agree with the Alderman Kabaki. It'd be an awesome, renovation for that area, and eyesore just wanting some tender loving care. So thank you, John.
Yeah.
Hey, John, this is Mark. When I spoke with Jerry this afternoon, two of us were over there looking at the property. Absolutely, the upgrade of the property would be great, and Jerry was very accommodating. When he spoke with you, he said, some 6-foot arborvitae is all he's going to require. He's not looking for a full-grown, match existing type. That would be thousands of dollars, obviously. So he knows they're going to grow up and go, and putting them in line and putting them on his property, I think would be the right thing to do. And the question I did have before is, are you going to paint the building first, and then when you do your phase 2 with the build out, then put the siding on? Is that what the plan would be?
My conversation with Jerry kind of ended, and it ties into this. We could, when we do the overhead doors on that, so the remainder of the building we would paint, then the south side where the overhead doors would go in, we could side that right away.
Okay.
And maybe put a temporary corner board on the existing building on the east side that can be removed when we do the addition part. And then we can tie those all in together nicely.
Perfect.
Okay, one thing I noticed when I was out there today, I believe the gentleman who lives behind that building actually owns it. there's a driveway there. Is that driveway gonna go away when the addition is added, or?
I definitely can. I mean, I would assume he's got no need for it anymore. So when we do the addition, it's pretty much, it's gonna block that entire driveway anyways.
Okay,
We can
that's what I was
landscape that out.
wondering. Okay, yeah, I look forward to the improvements to the building.
Excellent.
I have just one question, the development is fine. My question is only in relation to requirement for 50% masonry around buildings. Is that overlay a requirement in this particular district?
It does, because the general design guide applies to really any commercial zone properties, which this is. We apply it more so to new buildings, expansions, additions. If, for example, if the new addition was going in the front, I think we'd be looking at this very differently than if like the expansion was in the back. The north side of the building faces the back of a strip mall. Yeah, you do kind of see it as you head down the road there, down Westwood. So you are going to see some of it. And a portion of that's going to be overhead doors in the back of the building. And the east side of the building, yeah, kind of faces some landscaping, and that's kind of where the gentleman's house is. I haven't heard from them regarding any kind of comments. But yeah, I mean, 50% the plan commission could require. It's really a question of, the application, especially since it's kind of a retrofit remodel scenario.
Yeah, I'm asking that obviously because I just don't want to set precedent, but I'm not advocating for it. And I guess I just want to have a good reason solidified in this meeting as to why we wouldn't be requiring it, whereby we, where we require it on others. So.
And my 2 cents on that would be, like I said, I think you could kind of hang your head on the idea, excuse me, that the front building is masonry of some type, some of it better quality than others, whether it's a brick or CMU. And that's going to stay that way, other than that one area they talked about between the garage doors and stuff, putting some siding in. And then as far as the addition goes, like I said, I think they're tying it in, but still not just keeping some, giving a little bit of character with some of the belt line and stuff that's proposed. I'm looking at the drawings here. I think it's a good mix of materials. And like I said, they're not getting rid of any of the masonry that is already there. So a good portion of what's there already has that masonry.
If this was a residential, masonry wouldn't be required, right? And we're really somewhat tying into the rest of the residential neighborhood.
Yeah, like I said, that was very specifically that one on the south side. At least the suggestion of that landowner was they thought the masonry took away some of the residential character or feel that the horizontal siding would provide.
Okay.
Do we need a motion to amend to add the language of the transition?
Yeah, I have a suggestion that would be siding with brick, with the brick, siding on the south side with the brick belt line, like was mentioned. And just we'll make some kind of note that the applicant and the neighbors will work together mutually to find a reasonable location for those.
Okay, I'll move to amend.
Second.
All those in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Any further discussion on the motion as amended?
Do we need to make a second amendment for removal of the pavement in the connecting property to the east?
I don't think so. The site plan that is part of the approval does show that area in back. It actually notes removal of asphalt and restoration with landscaping. So I would imply that that's already being planned.
Excellent. Okay.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the amended motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Thanks, Jeff.
Moving on to resolution PC 037-2020, approval of a building site and operation plan amendment for Alliance Construction and Design Incorporated, located at South 73 West 16555 Janesville Road.
Move to approve.
Second.
Kevin, was that a second?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm looking at two computers.
Adam?
Thank you. This is kind of a unique request. This project was in front of the Plan Commission back in, I think it was March, and they were even in front of us last August, I believe it was. This is believe is known as Your Auto Wash on Janesville Road. They are looking at demoing the bulk of the site, keeping just one bay of the car wash, and where the old building was, basically rebuilding a new building around it. But like I said, the key to remember here is they wanted to keep the one car wash bay, which is on the far eastern or northeastern part of the site. As part of the approval that we looked at in March, there aren't any really questions on that, except for there's one item. In part of that review, we found out that that wall of the building that's kind of on that northeast side is 2 inches too close to the lot line to make it compliant. And so it's considered non-conforming. So non-conforming buildings, when people are doing expansions or complete rebuilds, they have to worry about the 50% rules, it's called. So it causes some problems for them. So what the Plan Commission approved, which was something we all worked with the applicant on at that time, was the idea of having, they were going to move the wall in. They claimed that they could move the wall in without affecting the roof, without affecting the car wash, the 2 inches, which would make it compliant, which would mean the 50% rule was a moot point. Well, now that they're getting near submitting for permits, they realize that the cost to do that is extremely cost prohibitive, yet the owner is very adamant about keeping that car wash as part of it. So they understand that the Plan Commission can't just grant a waiver to that. They understand that they are going to have to go through the Board of Appeals. But per the suggestion of their attorney, and I do agree with this, the way it was worded, it didn't give them even the ability to go to Board of Appeals. It basically said, you have to just move the wall and that's that. They are just asking, which I think is a reasonable request, as everyone should have the right to apply for a variance. They are just basically asking for an amendment that will add some verbiage to allow them to apply for the variance. That doesn't mean they're going to get it. They're not even specifically, I don't think the Plan Commission needs to give a recommendation of whether it should or shouldn't be granted, because the Board of Appeals should look at it, it's on its own merits. Unless the Plan Commission has very adamant against this, they should make that known. And the other item is basically stating that, we're talking about what that wall had to look like when they moved it. So since they are rebuilding it, we had some concerns architecturally. Now, you don't really see this wall a whole lot because there's an adjacent auto store right next door. I think there's some overgrown landscaping and stuff. But the way it was worded is that that wall needed to be, I think it was 50% masonry, and there were some questions on that. So basically what's being amended here, I'm just looking at my notes, the resolution we amended, so it states that the masonry must account for at least 50% of each wall. That's the part I think that would be tweaked. The existing wall is masonry, so if they're not allowed to move it, it's a moot point. They're going to have that masonry anyway. It is, a CMU block or something. And I think their intention would just be to painted. So, those are kind of the two different features, and one really goes into the other. If they have to move the wall, the masonry thing is a moot point. It is, like I said, it's 0.19 feet, so 0.2 feet, so just a few inches. The one thing I said that I think is a concern is there have been some discussions between the applicant's attorney and myself and our city attorney. There's some unique state statutes and code things that relate to what's called a special exception, which is kind of like a variance, but more so like a conditional use grant that the Board of Appeals reviews. And it's kind of something that in my entire tenure here has never come up. And Jeff, our attorney, hasn't ever dealt with it. And after talking to some resources in the planning field today that deal with some kind of resources for those state, I got a much better understanding that even though the applicant thinks they can ask for this special exception, which doesn't require the whole hardship part of a variance, which is hard to prove sometimes, they believe that the Board of Appeals should be kind of just be able to make a decision without having hardship. Now, after my conversation today with the with this UW extension that kind of gives some really good planning advice and legal advice, and I have to talk to this with our attorney yet, I think they're going to have to go for a formal variance. It means they will have to prove hardship, which hardship means you have to prove there's something really unique here, not in other scenarios. And that's up to the Board of Appeals to decide, and no other board. But like I said, so this is a really minor thing as far as in my eyes for the Plan Commission, because it doesn't change what was there before. It just basically says either this, what was there before, or this other option, which would be a variance. And if they can get the variance from the Board of Appeals, great. And if they can't, then they have to figure out what they do with this car wash thing, either move the wall again or just demo the whole car wash. I mean, that is one option too. So just, yeah, any kind of comments, we don't have a problem with this. We're recommending approval because it doesn't take away anything. It just gives them another option.
I have a question, I guess. I don't recall the masonry veneer that, or was it a masonry veneer that was being proposed, a cultured stone on that building or not?
Yeah, I don't believe any of that changed. I know that we've approved a handful of veneers on projects in general. The concern, obviously masonry has a durability to it when you're using a full block or something. But we have approved a handful of projects that have used veneers. If that's something the plan commission wants to start thinking differently about, you're definitely welcome to. But yeah, they aren't asking for a change to that. So if it still shows that, that's what would have been there before.
I guess my specific question is that can be applied to that elevation, even though it's still masonry. In other words, they can apply the culture to the masonry and still get a stone look as opposed to a utilitarian block look.
Sure.
And so that thought's going through my head. Now it adds another inch or two to that dimension that they're already requesting at the for potentially for appeals. But I mean, if we want to stay true to the aesthetics, that would be a solution. Just throwing it out there and mentioning it as a comment, like you say. Does this have to come back through planning commission after it goes through Board of Appeals?
No, because it's going to basically do is either what they were approved for before would stick if they can just move the wall, or if they have to move the wall, maybe is a better term. Or if they do something, if they get the variance, then the wall stays as it is. And the one thing is we're requiring is the painting of it, so it matches the building at least. And we are, I believe the resolution has some considerations in it for landscaping along that wall. I think they were trying to get away from doing some landscaping, but we do definitely make some note that we want some landscaping. 6-foot high arborvitae in a couple spots on the site, including that eastern painted block wall. So the idea is that, it is a little more limited visibility, but between the painting in the arborvitaes, we'll require them spaced at enough where it's not a dense wall, but to give it some good screening, especially as it grows over time. I think that's going to be sufficient considering what that wall is facing.
Okay. I mean, I get it. That's fine. I just raised the issue because they actually could match the stone in the front, but it doesn't. I agree with you. It's landscaping and it's not that visible. So, and it's existing if it gets the variance approval. The other question, I guess, that pops in my mind is, are you looking for us to, if we feel moved to make a comment in regard to whether we would have approved this for over that setback line, or is that not what we're?
If the board, if the plan commission, excuse me, so I think they definitely can. I don't want to give the plan commission any false hope that's going to either get it for them or not get it for them. I mean, the board, I wouldn't be surprised if the board would just be curious and ask, hey, does the plan commission think this is a good idea to move it or not? Or to be able to leave it. So if anyone has any commentary, we will make sure it gets to the board if they so ask. I think the biggest question, and that aside, is the idea of what do they ask for? Like I said, I believe from my extensive research today and in the past that they still need a formal variance. They think they need the special exception thing, which is, like I said, such a new thing that doesn't seem to apply to them, but that's something we'll hammer out in the next few days, I'm sure.
Well, assuming they go to the Board of Appeals, I believe we're talking, a minute amount of inches on an existing building, and I certainly would have been supportive of, if it was in our power, I would have been supportive of that wall staying as is and existing.
Okay.
I'll come out and say that. So,
Adam, when we've sent recommendations to the Board of Appeals before, especially with flag lots, and so I mean, it's not even in the lake area, but the setbacks on storage. I think in my time on the plan commission, there have been a handful of times that we've given a recommendation that I don't know if we judge hardship, but this would look fine. And I agree with Jeremy. I wouldn't have an issue with this.
Yeah, and that's fair to say. Yeah, there have been recommendations before. I mean, the board knows from their training that they are supposed to base it on certain statutes and case law. But just like if neighbors don't object, we make that very clear, and I can make it very clear too that, consensus, if that is what it is, of the Plan Commission was that they wouldn't have an issue with it either. The board still got to hang their head on that hardship, but that's for the applicant to prove that.
Thank you.
Adam, with the attorney being involved and the owner, was there any discussion of buying 1 foot of property from the east owners? You know,
There wasn't, but I'm looking at a survey. It doesn't give dimensions of the adjacent building, but I can tell you it appears just as close, if not even closer. So
Okay.
if it makes that building non-compliant, that rules that
all
option.
right.
Well, I concur with Chris and Jeremy's comments relative to the building itself.
As do I.
Me three.
I guess I'll make it unanimous. Yeah, I sat on the Board of Appeals for years, and during the time I was there, I don't know if we ever asked or weren't given in the cases we were faced with at the time of having a recommendation from plan. But the biggest, well, legally they got to find a hardship, but the biggest fear is you got to find a hardship also to defend yourself in case the Plan Commission is going to sue you. So we're kind of making that clear that they can find a hardship anyway. I don't think they're going to have any problems. So just my 2 cents. Any other comments on this resolution? Hearing none, all those in favor of resolution 037, say aye.
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 Opposed? It passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Miscellaneous business, temporary outdoor seating. Adam, you want to go over that?
Sure. Yeah, and please chime in at any time. So this item was something the mayor and I kind of talked about over the past week or two. And, during this COVID pandemic, everybody, especially businesses, are trying to be creative. How do they stay afloat and how do they get customers? And there's obviously a varying level of customer comfort as far as dining in, dining outside, things like that. I think there's a lot of people encouraged by certain guidelines to have outdoor dining, the open air, allowing separation, things like that. So one of the things that has come up was the mayor and I were talking about was there's a couple businesses that have kind of done this already, maybe some more businesses that might want to do this as the weather's getting nicer, allow more outdoor seating options. And I think it was kind of just a question to get some opinions of the Plan Commission on if somebody wants to do this temporarily, I would assume, maybe some not as temporary, I don't know, any suggestions the Plan Commission maybe has, do we want to actually have some kind of maybe very basic permit process just to make sure there's not like a safety issue, or like, let's say someone has a very tiny parking lot and they cover the whole parking lot with seating. Okay, now they have no parking. That can cause some other inherent issues that we've seen in some other properties. So I guess, and Mayor, correct me if I'm wrong, just we kind of want to get some feedback on, suggestions, thoughts on what the Plan Commission had specifically relating to, outdoor seating, at least on a temporary COVID basis.
I think Adam did a nice job of what I was looking for. There's a number of communities throughout Wisconsin and other states that are doing something similar to this. It just gives their businesses more options to be able to attract customers at this point, specifically restaurants. And, myself, I think I'd feel more comfortable going to a restaurant and sitting outside than going inside even a one that's properly spaced out. So before we, I guess we just wanted you guys to weigh in and get your thoughts on the idea.
As long as it can be done safely, that's, I think it's a good idea, and temporarily.
Yeah, I personally have seen this in some other communities already, and specifically in regard to it having to go before Planning Commission. I don't know if our process needs to be to that level if it is on a temporary basis. Some of the other, as I understand, the tent rental places, because all the events have been canceled throughout the summer, a lot of businesses can get opportunities or deals on the tent rentals for this summer because of the business need. So I guess I absolutely support that. I don't know if it needs to be elevated. I think staff can handle it, to be honest. And the only concern I would have is neighbor concerns over noise, right? And like you said, parking. So.
I'm going to be in agreement with Jeremy. I'm not looking forward to going inside a restaurant anytime soon. So I'd be happy to sit outside on a table rather than going to a park and sitting in grass. So I believe staff can handle it as well. I wouldn't want somebody to have to wait another month for us to approve it. So I think staff should do it and just keep safety number one.
Yeah, my thought was, when, the city has done other things, Mayor, if I correct me, we even did some liquor licenses, right? Because of this and how it affects them. So we could do a no permit, like we could do a zoning permit if we want to do that, which is very minimally invasive, staff review only, and we can do no fee for it. It's only $20, but we could even do no fee. Just, I think if we're going to do it, let's have a tracking mechanism, which is good. And, that way if someone wants to do it, and maybe we just set like 1 or 2 guidelines here where, making sure I think number one, it should be on private property, right? I don't think anyone should be going into the right of way because you deal with liability questions there as a county road, city road. And I think number 2 is just, is there still ample parking, and is it still safely using the site? Like if there's only one driveway and they're blocking the driveway, obviously that's a safety issue. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, absolutely. I mean, once it affects the fire department and things like that, we're creating some other issues, right? Can't agree more.
I think staff is certainly capable of making those decisions.
Okay, and so what we can kind of do for criteria be, not in the right of way or on their own lot. Just make sure it's safe, meaning like I said, not blocking the driveway or something. If it's blocking an exit on the building, that I think most businesses are going to use common sense anyway, but we kind of just use that general oversight. And then, like I said, I think parking is a valid concern. I only bring this up because we had a few businesses in the past couple of years in front of us. So I just want to make sure that that we can cover our bases, especially the parking, because we don't want this person's new success maybe to be another business's demise or affect them because they don't have anywhere to, park customers because their customers might be parking somewhere else. So do you think that, do we say, and Mayor, you can chime in, do we want to even go as far as zoning permit? Just say, hey, get us some paperwork. I mean, like I said, it can do no fee, whatever you think.
From the impression I'm getting is the commission seems comfortable with if you come up with something responsible. So you can decide. I think tracking it obviously is a good idea, especially because some of these places will be asking to amend their premises for their liquor license. So they're going to have something spelt out anyway. And even if they aren't, I think having something spelt out in some manner or form holds them accountable to not switching it every week. If they're coming forward with something, they come up with a plan, and as we find out as you work through stuff, sometimes it changes. They can come back and amend it easy enough. It doesn't have to go through any approval besides staff. But I think allowing you to come up with a process for this would probably be a good idea.
That sounds good. And one thing too, I'll have as part of it is the idea that we'll note that, and correct me if you guys think differently, that it's valid through 2020. I mean, we all don't know what the future holds. People aren't going to have them in the winter, I don't think, unless they're trying to get creative with heating and stuff, but then that defeats the whole purpose of it being outside. So maybe we can just word it that this approval or whatever you want to call it, they would get from us would be valid through 2020, just can word it that way. And then obviously, depending where the world is at come next year, I think we cross that bridge then. Hopefully we're in a much better place.
I would agree. And if for some reason it needs to extend beyond that, then we just come back with better plans. And, I could actually see if you had enough property where places are going to try putting a tent up with and heat it just to be able to have more social distancing throughout their facility. But there's not a lot of places that come to mind that have that kind of space anyway, but who knows?
Yeah. And I think if someone's going to do something that could be a lot longer term or more significant, maybe that then is the trigger to say, hey, okay, now planning commission's involved. If you're going to because now you start dealing with things the building inspectors might need to be involved with. And I think with some basic lighting or something and chairs probably doesn't trigger anything in the building department. Obviously, if they're running like new wiring or electric, one thing, if they can just plug in a cord, probably not a concern. But if people are starting into heating and stuff, I think there's got to be a little more safety looked at there. And then that could be a planning commission thing and maybe even a building permit or something.
I think there is state law or in the building code, is it 180 days temporary? There might be a max temporary occupancy already in there. So from the building inspection department standpoint, that's something to take a look at.
Okay, I can look at that up.
That's a good suggestion. Thanks, Jeremy. Any other feedback on this? All right, and that's the case. Motion to adjourn would be in order.
Actually, one quick.
Oh, wait.
thing. Just wanted to give everyone a heads up. We historically don't have a July Plan Commission meeting just because the 4th usually falls very close to the first Tuesday. And this year is a perfect example. And I don't know if people are in or out for holidays, but the 4th of July is on a weekend. And I think right before, after is Plan Commission. And we normally don't schedule July at all. We do have at least one project, and I've actually had a few more inquiries of a few other people that are really hoping we would have a July and trying to be accommodating, especially in the pandemic situation. We want to be as flexible and accommodating as possible. In talking with the mayor, we did schedule, we have a public hearing and stuff that we're dealing with, a meeting for July, I'm just putting my calendar here, July 21st. So July 21st, it's a third Tuesday. That will be a Plan Commission meeting. If there's any issues with anybody knowing they can't attend that, if they could just let me know in advance, I would appreciate it. The notice does have to go out by tomorrow, so it's almost prepared now, but it will be wrapped up tomorrow morning and be out to the paper by tomorrow noon. But if anybody knows there's an immediate conflict, if you could just let me know tonight or first thing tomorrow morning, we can look at a plan B. The only reason we're doing this is because we don't have a July, and this request that I'm speaking of involves a rezoning and a land use amendment. The land use amendment lead time is significantly long for state law. Like it adds an extra like 2 or 4 weeks. So they just have to plan so far in advance, and they don't want to have approval so far away if they have to go to August as their only option. So we kind of did this in an effort to help them out, at least gives them a few jump on something that could delay them quite a bit longer otherwise. So just a heads up on that one.
Okay. I already know. I'll be available.
Okay.
Can we also?
I don't know. I'm available unless I can go on vacation somewhere because I'm on furlough again then.
I'd like to salute Chris Buckmaster, I mean, for all his backgrounds.
You like those, huh?
Yeah.
All right. Well, and if that's it for miscellaneous business, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved. Second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned at 6:50 p.m. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Good night,
you.
everybody.
Good night, all. Good night, all.
Good night.